What is happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic start to their week. Hope everybody's shelter in place, can't go to work unless you're considered to be crucial to the national security thing is going well for you. Thanks a lot there, COVID-19. Cheers, you asshole. Anyway, hope everybody's having a fantastic start to the week. What I wanted to talk about tonight was the C8 Corvette, mainly because it's finally out and about. It's getting out into the world, and folks are running that thing at the drag strip. People are giving different impressions of the car. You'll see a bunch of different reviews that are going to be popping up. Recently, there was somebody that took their car to the drag strip down here in Houston, and we're running off a few passes on a 100 shot. And it was pretty interesting to see and understand a little bit about the car, a little bit more up close. I wasn't driving it personally, but I did get an opportunity to check the car out. And the car is absolutely awesome to take a look at. The downside to it, though, I guess, because all of us are so jaded nowadays with power, with the performance, with these quarter mile times, and with everything else that we've been exposed to at this point, with the Hellcat, all the Hellcat variants, the Demon, GT500 now has been released out into the world. Michael Corleone is in. What's up? Got the arm flex. I like it. The problem is coming up that, a lot of people are saying, at least, that they don't think the car is fast enough. And I want to throw some things out there for you guys real quick to consider and to contemplate when it comes to the C8 Corvette. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think we've grown a little bit jaded nowadays. One of the problems is that fast, as it pertains in the practical sense of the word, what is a fast car? The numbers mean more than the driving experience. The numbers mean more than what the car can actually deliver nowadays. In terms of driving experience, durability, things like that, it's only all about the numbers. So let me put things into perspective. Bone stock, the C8 is running, and again, this is, don't take this as gospel here, but so far as I can tell, the C8 is running around, let's say 11.9, 11.8-ish in the quarter mile. I know I've seen some that were deeper in the 11s than that, and I've also seen some that were in the low 12s. In fact, we had one at Texas 2K here in Houston that I think went at 12.11 on its maiden pass, and I've seen as fast as 11.50. So let's split the difference, call it 11.80. The problem with this number is that it is more or less identical to the C7 going through the traps, basically an 11.8 at about 120 odd miles per hour. Same goes for the Vet. So far as I can tell, the times are basically identical. And that's for an 8-speed automatic version of the Vet versus this 7-speed or 8-speed, whatever it is, flappy paddle gearbox that we're going to be rocking with the C8. That is a significant difference, though, because, again, it is showing, just like the GT500 had shown with its DSG versus a torque converter automatic, that there's a significant performance gap between having that DSG and a torque converter automatic. So far as I can tell, based on power to weight, if the new C8 had a torque converter automatic, you'd probably see it about another 0.2, if not 0.3 quicker than what it is now, given power to weight ratios and things like that. That's a big gap to try to overcome. But there's some other things to consider. I'd like to hear y'all's opinion on this, because I'm a little bit torn when it comes to the Vet. I think that my opinions are valid for the GT500, but I don't really have anything to speak on when it comes to the Vet, mainly because I don't have the same expectations out of the Corvette that I did out of the GT500. To me, as a sports car, the C8 is a better, let's just say that it's better at its job than the GT500 is at its job being a muscle car, even though that's kind of hard to even quantify. Let me explain what I mean by that. So in one of the latest journo porns, they basically put a C8 up against a GT500. If memory serves me correctly, the GT500 kind of whacks the C8. And a lot of the Ford fandom was just absolutely blasting their trumpets from every freaking rooftop that you could find. And I guess they're a little bit warranted in that, But if you think about it, the Vet's coming in at about a 230, 240 horsepower deficit to that GT500. I mean, you can take and talk about weight, you can take weight into account in this, but it 230 horsepower makes up for a lot of freaking sense. Let's just be honest about that. So, but at any rate, in this case, Goliath beats David, and if you want to look at it like that, and the crowds go wild on the Ford side. But I guess the whole point of this is the Corvette a better sports car for the changes that they've made to it? And to me, I kind of get it. For some reason, the whole DSG flappy paddle gearbox thing makes sense for the Vet because it's not making the power and because it's really not set up to be a drag car, even though it does have launch mode, which, by the way, is pretty impressive with the Vet. The Vet that I was watching was regularly, I believe, in the 150 zone, albeit on a little bit of nitrous. But I believe stock, it was still in the low 160s on that 60 foot, far and away stronger in the 60 foot than what you would expect to see out of a stock GT500. Now, this Vet was more or less full weight with a drag wheel and tire setup, which is going to be the norm, by the way. I don't think you're going to see too many of those cars rolling out without a drag wheel and tire setup. But again, the car ran some pretty consistent, actually kind of impressive 60 foot numbers, and ran out the back door to a 1070, a string of 1070s in air that the car probably shouldn't have been running that well in. Pite's Performance did the tune, and I got to tell you, they did a great job with it on 100 shot in super soupy air. And just, I mean, when I say super soupy, I mean 98% humidity with a density altitude of around 1,400 feet. Let me just tell you that DA is murdering power, especially on the big end. And is where you're going to find that lack of power pretty evident. So the car certainly has more in it. Lower DAs, there's at least another couple of tenths in that thing, no doubt about it. So kudos there. But the problem is that there were still concerns about the transmission going into that test. And I am of the opinion that these cars are getting a little bit too complicated and a little bit too expensive. Let me explain what I mean. So when the C8 was released, we kept hearing about how you could get into a C8 for about $60,000, and it sounded pretty freaking good. But until you started to add different packages, and for the poverty pack, yeah, you could probably roll out of the dealership at maybe 65-ish, but in reality, the rolling majority of the Corvettes that have been ordered are basically floating around that $80,000 range. Let that sink in for just a minute. $80,000 for a Corvette. This is where I start to have some problems with the Corvette, and where my problems really do start to distance my opinion a little bit on that Corvette. First and foremost, what the hell, Corvette? Seriously? Whatever happened to the days where any normal walking around person, guy or gal that wanted a Vet, if you had a full-time job, you could afford a Corvette. Now, it wasn't like affording a Mustang, but this was a Vet, and if you pinched your pennies and ate your ramens, you could get away with that payment. It's not like that anymore. That every man's sports car, that jack of all trades, and that, that winner overall based on value and performance, that's gone away with the Corvette now. And because it's gone away, I don't really have an emotional attachment to that car. Not in the same way that I would for, say, a C7 Z06. Not in the same way that I would for any C6 or C5 for that matter. But this is a little bit different story. The entry-level car is exceedingly expensive, but just to get a few upgrades to the car means that you've got to spend another 33% of the cost of that vehicle to get basically a kind of performance package out of the car. Keep this in mind. This is the first year of the C8. It's also, probably more to the point here, the first iteration of the car. We're not even talking about a Grand Sport or a Z06. Maybe the Grand Sport or the Z06 would have a 4-cam variant of that engine. Maybe there's going to be a supercharged version of that car coming down the pipe soon. That's fantastic. But we're already talking about $80,000. So if we're already talking about $80,000, what is that Grand Sport going to cost with an upgraded engine? You know, for some looks really at that point. What is the Z06 going to run? Now, granted, I'm sure they're going to be criminally gorgeous once you get your hands on the thing. It's going to be mind-blowing just how good looking that car is. And again, I have to state that just from a visual standpoint, the impact of that car is pretty amazing, albeit a little bit on the sedate side, but hell, it's still a mid-engine sports car. It's going to be pretty badass. And the upgraded versions will follow suit with that. But again, we're talking about huge sums of money at this point. We're not talking about cars that are just going to cost $80,000 for the highest end upgrade or $90,000. Not even close to that. We're talking about cars that are probably going to tip 110, 115. Who knows? So realistically, I guess what I have to say is, given the performance numbers of those cars so far as we've seen, I cannot say that I'm fully on board with them. And as much as it pains me to say it, buying one of those cars, even one of the poverty pack cars, throwing upgrades at it, well, I got to ask you guys, if you're going to go that route, who are you competing against? Now think about it for a minute. You're not going to go up against a GT500. I mean, not really. I mean, if you're going to throw a 100 shot on it, or maybe a 125 shot on it, you're going to just be within the wheelhouse of that GT500, tire for tire, of course. In other words, take a stock GT500, put it on a drag pack, Corvette on a 100 shot or a 125 shot. They're going to be fairly close. But that's a Vet on spray. That's not a stock car. It's certainly not going to be in the wheelhouse of any Mopar. I mean, you take my car, for example, a stock Hellcat with a 309 gear and a drag pack. Now I'm going deep into the tens. I mean, I'm at least 2/10 quicker. Red Eye is right there in that same league. So again, what are you going to compete against? You're already outside of the norm in terms of cost. And you've got to mod the car just to get it to that level if we're talking about drag racing. So I get it. We're not talking about drag racing. Everybody likes to go drag racing. It's a sports car. Meh. Okay, fine. Fair trade. How about this? You going to take it to a road course? Are you going to campaign this car on a road course? Check it out. The same argument that I'll give for the Vet is going to be the same argument that I gave for the GT500. But it lost to the GT500. Ain't nobody going out and campaigning these cars competitively. These are going to be sportsmen. These are going to be guys that are taking their cars to the track because they want to have a good time. They want to learn how to drive. They want to learn a platform, what have you. This is their passion. They love driving. That's what they're going to do with the car. However, you have to consider one thing, the cost of it. Again, circles back around to sportsmen don't pay a ton. They upgrade where they can, and they master the platform that they're driving. Well, damn, if you're going to price this thing so freaking high that guys can't afford the car, then they're just going to keep buying up all the used C6 Corvettes that are out there, C5 Corvettes that are out there. Of course, this is if they're Vet guys. And they're going to go out and have a ball with these things. And it's not going to take too long for these Vets to start hitting the drag strip. There's always some well-heeled guys that show up at closed circuits that just, I don't know, they've got to try to prove a point or whatever. The problem is that these are the same guys that are sucking everybody's fumes around that track. And then we'll come up with some lame excuse afterwards. Look, here's the reality. The car is too expensive to campaign if you've got any upgrades from the factory included in the purchase price. Plain and simple. That's as easy as I can make it. And until this car, quite frankly, goes through probably 3 to 4 years worth of depreciation in the process, you're not going to see anybody dragging these things to the track, but you'll see a shite load more of these vets than you will GT500s. You can mark my word on that. But even then, I mean, at what point are these cars going to start to become competitive? I don't know, but for a value proposition, you're just not going to make it there with the Corvette. A couple other things to consider, or at least one thing that I learned about the Vet that I thought was pretty interesting. If you're planning on drag racing the car, one of the problems is if the tire pressure sensors, the tire pressure monitors figure out that you don't have the TPMS in the car, like equipped in your drag pack, it won't let you go into launch mode. Now, that only happened for a brief period of time while I was at the drag strip, but I mean, damn, to fix it, it meant taking the tires, the drag pack off, putting the other tires on the car, killing the battery, lighting the thing back up, driving it, letting it realize that the tires were on the car, taking them off, and then putting the drag pack back on. What the hell is that? You got to be kidding me. You mean to tell me that I've got to go through that kind of rigmarole if I'm going to have take the car to the drag strip? Anyway, let me get to y'all's comments. That's going to wrap up the monologue. Hopefully that gives us something to chat about. Let me buzz through here real quick, see who all is in. Sam's in. He likes to see a Dr. Dip say, what up, B? Revlog, sexy as always. Thank you very much. Rick Gross is checking in and said, hey, B, glad to see you. Glad to see you, Rick. CJ's checking in and saying, hey, B. Mason, what's up, brother? How's it going? It's going pretty good, man. Can't complain. Dr. Dip saying, not fast enough. It makes 450 wheel. That's pretty quick. Jaded place that we're all in terms of fast here in just a minute. CJ saying, what do you think of the coronavirus going on here in America? I think it sucks asshole. Dr. Div saying, I want to see how that DCT holds up to Hennessy Twins. Actually, it'll probably hold up pretty good against turbos. They just don't hit that hard. So, but here's the thing. On the shift, how is it going to hold up? I'm not worried about the transmission holding power in gear. I'm worried about what happens when it starts to switch gears and how much timing it's going to rip. How are they going to make that work? Dean's checking in saying, what up, you Mason? What up, Dean? Then Boy's checking in saying, yo, man. Dim Boy's running saying, dude, these cars nowadays are like paying for a house, way too expensive. Real talk, man. That's kind of what I'm getting at. This is getting out of control. Yeah, and that brings me to a point. Good point, by the way, kind of kicks us off on another topic, D. So check this out. I remember Corvettes being the working class, working man sports car. You could work your hours, pop in a little bit of overtime. That helps you cover your vet payment and the tickets that you got. That was kind of how vets work. That's what owning a vet was like. Yeah, they would still hot rod them and things like that, but you did what you did, right? Nowadays, it doesn't work like that. You basically have to pick up a side hustle and job number two, man. To be able to cover the cost of one of these new cars it's mind-numbing. Whatever happened to the Roadrunner, okay? Low cost hot rod, man. Whatever happened to the Camaro? Whatever happened to the Mustang? I guess that's the closest thing that we've got. And even that car, when you adjust the price back, is what is that thing? Like double the cost of, in other words, you have to work double the hours to be able to afford a car today than you would have back in the original muscle car era. Forget about the cost of gasoline. That's been pretty constant based on inflation. But the reality is that the vehicle itself absorbs so much more of your money. And let's not forget, you've got more bills today than they had back then. Netflix, cable bill, satellite, whatever, internet, cell phone, all these extra bills that you've got now that suck up even more money. So really, you've got far less disposable income to work with now than you ever did in the past. I mean, unless you're just doing without, who's to say, man? Money management might be the mark of a status nowadays. Anyway, getting back to it, good point. Good man saying, I can't find a rear end brace for my old 09 SRT8 Challenger. Anybody know if the new Challenger brace will fit on the old Challenger? I don't think that it will, and the reason why is because the cradle is a little bit different, but I would give Performance a shout, PE number 4 Mance. Them boys running saying this issue is all the electronic stuff and all these different gadgets they come with. Yeah, I would agree with that, but what about economies of scale? This stuff has been out for a long time. Sensors, accelerometers, different computers, all of that stuff. It's not like we're beta testing this. These are contraptions that have been part of our lives for 20 odd years. And they've been getting better, smaller, cheaper, faster ever since then. So I can't, for the life of me, figure out why the cost is so high. I mean, is it to cover the cost of marketing? What kind of expenses are we still covering? It just doesn't really make any sense. And listen, I'm all for innovation. I'm all for the new. I'm all for folks getting on board and coming up with new, interesting, and fun ideas for these cars. But damn, at what expense? I mean, I'm all for it, provided that somehow or another that cost is amortized over a little bit longer than right now, like this year. It's anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic, but no, I agree with you 100%. I just want to know when we can actually get to enjoy these things. I mean, the funny thing about it is that you work so much to put that thing in your garage that you never get a chance to enjoy it. And I mean, really enjoy it. So anyway, let's see. Hayden is saying, hey, D. Mason, for Challenger manual models specifically, how do you mitigate wheel hop? What is the combo of parts you would use, and what's your suggestion to get it to hook and book? First and foremost, go with a set of BMR lower control arms, performance rear diff brace. Make sure you're running the proper amount of air in your tires. Don't try to cheat them down. You're going to want to run them at somewhere around 28 to 30 PSI. That's going to help you out a lot. But again, don't try to underinflate the tires. That's going to create a problem. If you're taking the car to the drag strip, ET Street R's are good, but Biasply is better. Unfortunately, these cars don't really do well with Biasply. So ET Street R's where you're at, drop them down to about 22 PSI, 20 PSI will be good. Dim Boys Running saying, this is why I say folks need to start going out and buying older cars and modding them. For what you pay on a new car, you can buy an older one and mod it to hell and have a beast of a car. Absolutely right, my friend. Absolutely right. CJ Colvin saying the new C8 Corvette Stingrays look almost like exotics. Yeah, they do. Which is kind of the cool thing about them. It's just that you're also starting to pay some exotic pricing. Sam says basically C8 or a fully loaded Dodge truck. Yeah, it's true too. Trucks aren't getting any cheaper, which is weird. Anyway, Grabber here is saying the Corvette mid-engine design has more potential than front-engine design. Not can handle and use more horsepower better than front engine. Sorta. Yes and no. It depends on how you're rolling that thing back. Transmission choices are going to limit you before the platform will. And realistically, yes, it should hook a little bit better with the engine in the rear. Once you transfer the weight, you've got the engine in the back. It should work a little bit better that way. The problem with that way of thinking, though, is that the front engine vet, the C7, it's almost a front mid-engine car as opposed to a rear mid-engine car with as far back as that engine is sitting. It doesn't seem to have too much of a problem transferring weight. So where folks tend to get it wrong is they start to speak in generalizations when it comes to these cars. What I will tell you is this, and I haven't driven one on a closed course. I haven't even driven one at all. But I can tell you from my experience running Vipers around either Blint Base or autocrossing or whatever the crazy crap I was doing with those things, I can tell you that when you're dealing with a car that is a little bit more rear weight bias, which is how the Gen 2 Vipers kind of are, you'll find that they're a little bit sketchy and they understeer a little bit. So not as bad as an older Porsche 911, but it's a different learning curve. You just have to learn the platform and you can't treat it the same as you do a front engine car. Once you learn the platform, it can be more, how do I put this? They can telegraph what is going on underneath you better than a front engine car. You're removed a little bit. Your steering feel is better because the engine isn't in front of you. You're not being hampered with any any translation of engine vibrations through the steering rack. Or at least they're numbed because they're 5 feet away from your steering rack. So you get better road feel, which is a good thing. But again, some folks will say they're a little bit lumbering if they're used to driving a front engine car. I don't know. Just the stuff that I know about. Hidden Demon saying true. CJ Colvin saying exactly what boys running. Oh, about the older cars. Absolutely. TU. Hey, yo, man, what's up? What are your expectations for the upcoming C8 Z06 and C8 Z01 power numbers wise? You're going to see power numbers probably in the 700 to 750 horsepower range. I don't think it's going to be too far away from that. At least that's what I would assume. But see, here's the thing though. They're also talking about a 4-cam variant. And if the 4-cam variant is anything like what I've heard, it's basically going to kick things up about 100 horsepower over the current 6.2 liter, which would mean 550 horsepower. You'd have cars that would run pretty solid mid-10s, like a 1070, 1080, which is all great. Love to see that. Fantastic. The only drawback to that is if we lose the boosted version of that car, it's going to be a real drag because we need that trifecta with the Camaro more or less going away, and honestly with it really not being much of a competitor, if we're being honest right now anyway, on the drag strip. We've got to have something coming from Chevrolet that is overwhelmingly competitive. I would love to see something. And again, rumors have floated around. I don't like doing that, but it was hovering around 700 horsepower. I think it might be a little bit more than that. But we're just going to have to see. What I'm hoping is that we get a 4-cam variant and that we get a supercharged variant or a turbocharged variant. I know that other combinations have been looked at, 4-cam with a turbo, but displacement I'm not too sure of. At least I can't really speak. I can't give you a convincing answer to that because I don't know the specific of it. But there's just some stuff that I know that have been kicked around. That's it. Hopefully they get the numbers right though, because I just would hate to see the Vet fall into obscurity behind a GT500, a battle between GT500s and Mopars, and Chevrolet just not have an answer for it. Anyway, that's what I would like to see. Some of that is a little bit of the rumor that I had heard, but here within about the last year, I've been batting about 800 on rumors that I've heard. Most of them been true. Few of them haven't been true. Christian saying, I just hold off for a couple of years and snatch an IC7 Z06. Want the prices dropped due to the C8. The C7 is still an amazing car and looks absolutely gorgeous. I will agree with that. And I'll take that a step farther. The C7 ergonomically is amazing. It is very intuitive the way that car is put together. So if nothing else, it's the last of the breed, right? So, there's that to consider. Let's see. Dr. Diff is saying running injector juice through the 127 fuel injector connection so they stay good while waiting on a piston and rod. Good call on the live chat. Nice to have going. Nice to have going on 6 injectors to go. Nice. Keep them freshened up. TU saying, man, the 6869 Roadrunner was the literal definition of affordable high-performance muscle car. Here's the cool thing about that car. I'll agree with that. Y'all know my favorite all-time car, center console 69 Roadrunner. That is still, that holy grail car that, if I could ever get my hands on one, that or a, like a 64 Polaro with a 4-speed, something like that. But the thing is that was back when, if the average person working a full-time job, if that average income was $5,000, you got to remember that. And by the way, at 69 to 2020, it's almost an exact 10-to-1 correlation here. So let me put this in perspective. The 69 Roadrunner, I want to say cost $2,900. So basically $29,000 when you adjust it for today. Do you realize that you could have bought a 69 Roadrunner back then with a Hemi, with the 727, with a 411 gear? Hell, you could probably get an A12 package with a 440 for $3,800. It's the equivalent of $38,000 today. That's like a high-level RT package money these days. It's just ridiculous. That's the difference in costing from back then to today. So when I say that the difference was a lot, Corvettes of the day, a big block vet would have been $4,500 or roughly $45,000 in today's money. Not 60, not 80. We're literally talking about double the money for the car. That is a very, very difficult value proposition to overcome. And I'm sorry to say, guys, I am out of that argument now. I cannot at all start to even entertain getting something else now. It would have to be something older. It would have to be something that I could, I mean, we're talking almost to the point of carburation here for me to even get excited about it now, because the value proposition has been so far and away bastardized that I can't, with a clear conscience, take myself to a car dealership and shell out that kind of money for that kind of car, with the understanding that if I'm paying big money on the front end, I've got to pay big money on the back end in appreciation. You don't lose money when you buy it. You lose money when you sell it. And that's where the problem lies with these modern cars. I now have to look at, instead of, 25% depreciation, 30% depreciation on $30,000 or $40,000, I'm now looking at $80,000. That's $24,000 that I'm never going to see again if I paid cash for the car and held on to it for just a few years. So is it worth spending the equivalent of, if you held on to the car for 3-4 years, is it worth spending that kind of money every year, not only in payments, you also have to pay that money back to yourself in depreciation. Makes it real difficult. And let me tell you something too, guys. There's nothing less sexy about mixing in finances when it comes to, your dream car. That fantasy, the dream car, the trips that you're going to take and everything else. You don't want to have to think about the money part. You want to think that you already thought about the money part and that money part thing was already kind of wrapped up. But in reality, it's not. And those are the things that really suck about the modern car. You just can't truly enjoy them unless you have got hella money to throw at it. Not only once, but twice. Let's see. We've got CJ's checking in saying there's a YouTube channel called Vintage Speed Garage, and he has a blue 71 F100 bump side. Those are cool trucks. With the 6.8 liter V10 out of an 03 Econoline van, and he made it into a tire shredding monster. I bet those V10s are torquey as hell. Shawnee checking in saying, what's up, everybody? What's up, Sean? CJ Coleman saying vehicles these days are nothing but overpriced, for sure. Oh, damn. Shawnee's saying bad news. April racing looks very unlikely. Good news. Quarter mile drag racing doesn't seem to be a huge priority for me right now. Well, we need to get you back on track and make it a priority, brother. Sam's saying, back to my comment about the fully loaded Ram. If you bought it, you could do much more and turn it into a money maker. Well, that's part of the thing. I mean, you can always make money with a truck one way or another. And, well, you can't do that with a vet. I mean, unless you've got a YouTube channel and you've got a lot of subscribers, you're not going to turn that vet into anything other than a pain in your pocketbook. And that's assuming that the thing holds together. See, in my opinion, personal opinion, I don't know that the vet is even going to be all that durable with that transmission. But again, that's yet to be seen. I didn't see any indication of that car going into clutch over temp mode while we were at the drag strip either. So, in fact, that car was making hit after hit after hit without a hiccup. So, got to say, impressed by that. Rick is saying, yeah, speaking companies out pricing their hot cars, I was thinking about pulling the trigger on a new 2019 Red Eye. Stickered for $87K. I just couldn't sanely do it. Got my 2018 Hellcat with 840 miles. It's been my point the entire time, guys. Look, there's a reason why they don't option the Hellcats with a 309 gear. Because so far I've proven that if you take your literal garden variety Hellcat, early release, first of the batch Hellcats over here, birth date's November 19th. You take 2014, you take this old girl right here, throw a 309 gear in it, put a drag pack on it, take it to your favorite drag strip and start ripping off some mid to low 10-second passes. That's going to get the attention of a lot of red eyes. So yeah, the fact is that the Hellcat is actually turning into, strangely enough, a value proposition, dare I say. Anyway. Oh, damn. Hang on a second. Shawnee, thank you very much. He's saying single versus dual catch can on Hellcats, pros and cons. If you have a Hellcat and you are contemplating a catch can, I would highly suggest going with a dual catch can setup. JLT, I think, has got one, and Billet Technologies makes a pretty trick kit. The reason for that is you've got on the passenger side, you basically got your hot side, which is when your car is running, that's the PCV, that's your pollution control valve. But actually on these cars, it's basically just running all the time when you're not in boost. The discharge side is on your driver's side. Now, when the car is under boost and you do have positive crankcase ventilation in play or positive crankcase pressure being developed, that comes out of this side and rolls in through the intake tract. You've got to have a catch can on both sides. If you don't, you're only filtering the air either when the car is at normal cruise or when the car is at full boost, but not both. That's the thing with these cars. The only way to get around that, there's a couple of little tuning things on the older cars you have to do, but for the newer ones, you can just run breathers and it'll be okay, vent to atmosphere, but it makes a freaking mess of things, especially if you've got any real amount of crankcase pressure being developed. So my opinion, you got to run twins on these things to make the most of your catch can dollar work for you. Great question, Sean. Thank you very much for the contribution to the cause. Let's see. Time out here. Let's see. Here we go. Jean-Paul saying, do you recommend Biasply for a 6-speed manual? I do, only if you're running Biasply fronts. The problem with these cars is that they are independent rear suspension. Independent rear suspension cars and Biasply don't really get along too good. The thing is you'll get, let's see if I can demonstrate the feeling that you'll get. I used to get this with my Vet because I ran Biasplies on the Vet and on the Viper. At the top of the track at about 100 and say north of 120, say 125, 135 miles an hour, it would start to get this kind of feel to it. It's very minor. I mean, you're not seeing me going like this, right? But the first time it happens, you're going to swear to God that's happening. But the reality is the car can shimmy just a little bit going through the traps. It's just the car kind of snaking, and what's happening is they're non-radial, and what's happening is as that suspension is unloading a little bit, you're actually changing the camber of the tires, and it's unloading the tire or unloading the springs a little bit as the car settles down under speed. That can upset some tires, I guess, best way I can put it. But if you run radials up front and Biasply in the rear, the back of the car is the only thing that'll shimmy, and that can throw weight bias off a little bit. Running the two fronts, I always found it was just fine. Basically, once you got used to that high-speed shimmy, so to speak, it's slight, but the first time you experience it, it's pretty intense. And up to 150, 160 miles an hour under hard acceleration, you get a little bit of that, getting through the traps. And then the other thing too, roll off the throttle slowly. You don't just chop throttle. You actually kind of peel off the throttle a little bit so you don't just unload the suspension in total. But yeah, that's kind of independent rear suspension 101. I would highly suggest just sticking with ET Street R's. They're a hell of a lot more stable. You can do about 90% of every acceleration run you can think of at any power level. You can run that on ET Street Rs and be real safe in the process. Stick with that. I really wouldn't mess with the Biasply. Just my 2 cents. Leave those to the solid rear axle guys. Rick saying, use my God-given common sense. Very happy. Got the money bags. I like it. CJ Colton saying, Ford was supposed to release the new 2024 Bronco, but it got canceled due to the coronavirus. Yeah, they'll bring that back. Give it a couple of months. They'll be back up on track with that. Shawnee's saying, I'm a little late to the chat. The CA looks like a poor man's Ferrari, and that is a compliment. Part of me thinks you are kind of interested. Well, I'm kind of interested as a car guy. You know, I'm not interested in it as a potential buyer. Now, the GT500 was a different story. I was legitimately interested in that car as a consumer, as a buyer. But the more I looked into it, and this bug just about flew in my mouth. The more I looked into it, and the more I started kind of doing my research on that car, the less I really wanted one. And the reason for that, I mean, I've spilled that out on a couple of videos. Maybe doing a retort to some of the comments that I got, by the way. Got a lot of interesting comments on that. But anyway, the main thing is this. You know, the Vet, the way that it sits just doesn't, it's not going to flip any switches for me. It would take a Grand Sport. It would take a Z06, ZR1 version of it. It would take something like that to really get my juices flowing. But for now, I just can't see, just based on what I've already seen with the car, I just couldn't see shelling out that kind of money. And I'm not talking about the base model Vet. I'm talking about this $80,000 proposition. I just can't see shelling out that kind of dough for a car that is more expensive than the car that beat it around a track, which is the GT500. And I get it, apples and bananas at this point. We're not even, it's really not a fair comparison. But what else are you going to do with the Vet? And especially when you look at the cost, which is always the trump card that the Fords have. They're just less expensive. Even with the add a tag, it could potentially be less expensive than the Vet at full sticker without an add a tag. The fuck? I mean, how are you going to justify that? It doesn't even make sense, but that's what we're up against here. So anyway, back to it. Let's see. Oh, Dr. is saying, damn, number 7 had piston on the tip. Ooh. I'll give you a shout tomorrow, man. I want to see some pics of that. Hayden saying, thanks for the response, especially with last generation's muscle cars really being figured out. It doesn't make any sense not to get one of those. Mod and enjoy. Just my 2 cents. Pump the brakes on that real quick, Hayden, because I got to tell you something. As great as that proposition sounds, and it does sound like a hoot and a holler, right? There's some things that you have to remember about the older cars, and this is where guys get completely fooked when they start looking at older hot rods. First and foremost, they're 50 years old. Actually, they're coming up on 60 years old. So you've got to know that these things have seen some things, all right? These girls have not only been around the block, they've been around the freaking world, okay? So there's that to consider. But look it, man, you were talking about 60 years worth of driving, 60 years worth of potential bad body work, rust, shitty repairs on the engine, transmission, frame issues. That there's so many problems that can happen to one of these cars that unless you know for a fact and you've been a part of the restoration process or the car was in the family, the proposition of buying one is really sketchy, really sketchy. You can listen. The scary thing about it is that it is pretty easy to make a car functionally very attractive. Great looking paint, thing looks solid, what have you. But you get the thing up on a lift and you start seeing suspension parts that have been booger welded, and then the whole chassis spray painted black, and trying to cover up a bunch of just snot welds and just a bunch of bad shit. That's what you're trying to avoid with these cars. So when we're talking about buying an older car, it is so difficult, because here's the other side to that. Those cars were never designed with crash testing really in mind. They were never designed with the safety that modern cars can provide. And I'm not talking about just, anti-lock brakes and crap like that. I'm talking about, you've got to have cars, what is it, after like 65 had to have dual pot master cylinders. That's a huge thing. Older than that, single pot master cylinder, you get a bad brake line and you lose all your brakes. Bad brakes that weren't that good to begin with. And, going fast in a straight line is great, but the car has got to be able to stop, and it's got to be able to handle. And modern tires help that a lot. Don't get me wrong, but they're just not designed the way that modern cars are. And they're also, unless you do a transmission swap, they are a wreck. Those wreck your ears if you try to take the thing on any reasonably long trip. No overdrive means you're stuck with high RPM highway cruising, which sucks. And if you gear it to where it's going to knock that RPM down, well, then the car is not going to accelerate the way a true muscle car should accelerate. So again, it's a case of just don't meet your heroes. I've dealt with those cars. I've lived with them, and driven them, dynoed them, done a lot of things with them. I can tell you that some have been really fun. Others have been really scary. I've owned a really scary AC Cobra, a Superformance big block Cobra, no less. So a true licensed Shelby Cobra, and that thing was a freaking scary car. But you start getting into or past that aspect of it, there's a lot of issues that you have to look for with those types of cars. And again, Shawnee, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate the contribution. CJ saying, my dad just bought a new 2019 Dodge Charger RT Scat Pack with a 392, and it is a beast, and he loves it. And my mom now wants a new SS Camaro. That'll be a fun trip to the office in the morning. I bet you that there's going to be some mom versus dad drag racing going on there. Christian saying, CJ, I was hoping to see the new Bronco. I wish Ford would do an online announcement to serve as a distraction for everything that's going on. Yeah, it sucks too. And, we're still looking at about 2 weeks, 3 weeks of this shit at the earliest. So stay hydrated. Let's see. It's medical. I like it. Cool name, saying I like them. They have a great look, but I'm happy with my 2019 Scat Pack. True that, man. Yeah, I wouldn't trade a Scat Pack for a new Vet. Not even. Scat Pack is actually a very cool car. Love Scatties. CJ saying exactly. Christian saying, do y'all think the C8Z06 will get a version of the flat plane crank found in the C8R? That thing sounds like it came from hell. There's a lot of rumors that are going on or running around about that. But yeah, flat plane dual overhead cam engine is what I had heard as one of the engine options. Them boys running saying the C7 is my favorite Corvette. God, I want a Grand Sport so bad, but the cost is too much. And the roads here in Arkansas are so ass. Scrape the bottom of my Mustang all the time, so C7 is a no. That sucks. Yeah, C7s are great. C7 Grand Sport, C7 Z06 is the look for me with the C7. I am not a C7 Stingray guy, not even in the slightest. But that opinion does a complete 180 when I see the Grand Sport and the Z06. Completely different car in my eyes. Rick saying, I've had several really nice 69 and 70 Roadrunners and Super Bs, always near and dear to my heart. You got good taste, brother. Thank you very much, man. Yeah, I had a center console Sunfire yellow 69 Roadrunner get sold right out from underneath me. In fact, I did a video on that. Broke my freaking heart. Yeah. Saved up, working extra hours, doing extra bids, extra jobs, and Fucker sold it. But yeah, it was a 383 car, center console, Sunfire yellow. Awesome car. Would love to find one. Derek saying, love my 2019 Scat. It's definitely a special car. Like to see people getting the Scat and not straight to the Hellcat. Love the Hellcat, but the Scat is just so much more affordable and so much more fun. That is the last topic that we talked about, and that is so difficult to translate to folks nowadays. Listen, what I love about the Scatties is that you can run mid-12s with that car on accident. Put it on a tire, get it in good air, deep into the 12s, high 11s, and with a tune and a few other tasteful modifications, you're running mid to low 11s with that car in sick air. That is an extremely fun car, and it's a car with power that is usable all the time, and that to me is the most fun part of it. If I had any regrets with the Kitty, is that you can't be really ham-fisted with the car the way that you kind of can be with a Scat Pack. These things, the problem with the Hellcat and any of these modern cars that are just obnoxiously fast, this is kind of the entry level to some of those fast ass cars that are coming around nowadays. Sorry, there's a bug that's circling my head like a freaking satellite. The thing is that these things will get to speeds that are incredibly stupid in an incredibly stupidly short amount of time. You know, Scat Pack, Mustang, Camaro, they'll get you to about 130 pretty quickly. The difference is that the Hellcat will get you to 130 right now. GT500 gets you to 130 right now. ZL1 is the same. These cars will get you to 150 easily within the amount of time that it takes one of the other cars to get to 130. I mean, comfortably, like you're cruising at that speed waiting for them to hit it. That's how fast these cars are. And they're just the fun, giddy, dumb kid in me, which takes up a lot of real estate in my head, by the way, doesn't really know what to do with it. I mean, I enjoy the car. I have a lot of fun with it. And we've proven a lot of points, and we've shut a lot of people up with this car. And that was kind of the point for my Hellcat. But I miss being a dumb kid. And I really would like to build something that just embodied the fun of having a hot rod and not really worried too much about the speed or the number or anything like that. Hell, all I want the thing to do is light the tires up until I take my foot off the gas, do sick donuts, and just do dumb shit, just act like a dumbass. So those are the fun ones. Those are the times where you're just goofing off. Those are the memories that you make. When I'm doing data logging with this car, when I'm collecting, like literally out only to collect data with this car, I have to put this thing under high load, sometimes up to and through about 150, 160 miles an hour. There's a lot that can happen within that amount of time. And I'm doing this watching data. I'm constantly scanning back and forth, looking at short-term knock retard. Just please don't freaking act stupid. That's a little bit nerve-wracking. So yeah, anyway, I get what you're saying about fun. It's a major thing. Dim Boys is saying Christian's saying, Dim Boys is talking to Dim Boys saying, I think that if you hold off for 3 to 4 years, the C7 prices will drop. Patience. True that, man. I got no patience, man. I'm one of the most impatient people. Dim Boys is saying, yeah, Christian, I know, but the roads in my state are really bad. Yeah, he was talking about roads being really bad. Talking about if he tries to get rid of his Mustang, he's going to get 16 large for it. Yeah, that's a sting right there. Let's see. Dr. Div saying, in regards to the truck comment, what about a crew cab that runs with the C8? Yeah, no kidding, right? Actually, that crew cab will walk all over that C8. We just got to get it out there and make it happen, brother. But yeah, that crew cab should give that C8 all it can handle and then some. CJ saying, trucks these days are also overpriced as well. Plus, people that buy those $80,000 trucks will probably never use them for work or hauling at all. Very, very true. Paul checking in saying, I bought a 69 Hemi Roadrunner 2-door post 4-speed, numbers matching for $3,200 in 1977. Sold it for 40 grand in 1990. Wish I had it now. Heard it is for sale for 250 large. Jimmy Society, one of two left. Unbelievable, man. Can only imagine. The last Roadrunner I drove was had a 572 cubic inch Hemi in it. Had a 727 car, had 327 gears in it. It was a good running car. But I mean, it had the kitchen sink thrown at it, so you would expect it would be pretty good. Actually, one of my favorite cars to drive was a 68 Roadrunner, had a automatic column shift, 355 gear 440 car. Pretty well warmed over 440, but 440 is kind of signed off around 5,500. That was a fun car though, man. Real fun car. Chris is saying, being a dead horse on this point, but here's to hoping the Grand Sporter Z06 will get a stick. Not holding my breath though. Well, that's part of the problem here, is that we don't have anything really to fall back on with that car. And to those that are really wanting a true manual transmission, listen, guys, I'm right there with you. Unfortunately, the C7 is the last of its kind. If they came out with an actual true 3-pedal manual, that would be great. But, and I get why. Trust me, I understand why they're not doing that. I get the direction that they're trying to go. And anyway, I understand it. Fine. But it's just another reason for me not to buy one. It really is. I mean, it's just another. For the vet, though, for me, the DSG does make a little bit better sense. I'll be honest with you guys about that. That's something that I've said now for a while. It just kind of makes sense in the fact that it doesn't have the same power. It's a lighter weight car. They just kind of work better in that environment. So for that car, okay. But I don't know. For me, it's a potential limiting factor to the car. Until I see that it's a limiting factor, though, I can't really call it a limiting factor. I guess you could say it's the not knowing that kind of bothers me. It's the fact that the car isn't being beaten to death on a drag strip, like torture tested, the way that the automatics were and the way that the 6-speed manuals were. And I get it. You can say, well, it's not made for that. Well, look, I get it's not made for that. There's plenty of Corvettes that go up and down the drag strip every weekend. Trust me, when the track's open, I'll be seeing them a lot. But the reality is that I'm a little bit, I'm left unconvinced at this point from a durability standpoint, but we'll see. Let's see. Them boys is saying Hennessy already put a twin turbo in the C8. That is true. One of the things I'm curious about on that car is, as it's going through the gears, how much timing are they killing? Or more to the point, what are they doing to mitigate torque on the shift? And how long is it going to take for them to start getting greedy and potentially break that transmission? I got to see that thing on the drag strip. And I got to see how much torture that transmission will take. And I mean shifting through the gears. Not, spray, click, spray, click, spray, click, spray. Not that. Which is what folks are doing with the car to try to keep it from, yanking a bunch of timing or blowing up the transmission or burning up a clutch. I want to see that thing, that turbo going through the drag strip, just just wide open. I would love to know what they're going to do to try to mitigate transmission damage in that car with any real amount of power. Now, granted, we're not talking big power though. I mean, you got 450 that the vet's making. You throw a turbo setup on it. Yeah, let's say you get it up to around 600-ish, maybe 650. Yeah, it's not really a lot. And the car that doesn't weigh that much, I'm interested. Let me say this. I'm interested, but I'm also a little bit bummed out too. I'm interested because it's a vet and it's a mid-engine vet and they got a turbo and a mid-engine that's a Corvette. The problem is I can't afford one, and I'm a little bit bummed out by that, and it sucks. So I guess I will have to, admire from afar, right? Let's see. Catch Can is saying, Catch Can comment, I know that the boost comes out of the intake side of the PCV system on the passenger side. That is correct. Actually, on the Hellcat, comes in the inlet tract under boost on the driver's side. Unless I have completely lost my mind. Actually, it's probably coming from both sides. Gravity Gear is saying, what do you feel would be the best depreciated performance car to buy for $30,000 to $40,000? Good question. I will have to say that, okay, first car that comes to mind is going to be any of the LS3 C6 Corvettes. That's going to be one of the first ones that pops up in my head. Second to that would be a performance pack Mustang, followed closely by any scat pack, something with a 392. Those would be the cars that I would look at. Now, it depends on what you're going to do with this contraption, because don't forget, the trucks are out there. So, a used F-150 could, with a 5-liter oil pump gears, a blower tune, exhaust, figure out a way to not blow yokes up on the drive shaft. Really fast truck. You also got the LS stuff that you can make as fast as whatever number you want to run. You can do that with a truck too. So there's that to consider as well. And probably the route that I would go, just because this is Texas and I like doing stupid shit with trucks. So, but those are some of the cars and trucks that I would take a look at. CJ Colvin is saying, if you had the money, you can take an older vehicle, fix it up, do some upgrades to it, and make it into a powerful street machine of your own. True, but the caveat is if you've got the money and you've got the right donor car. Because some of those things, I mean, look, I'm telling you, they have been hacked together, butchered up. I mean, to the point where they're not even safe. And that, to me, is a little bit of a scarier proposition. They have been butchered and hacked up to the point where they're literally not fit for road use. Brakes are sketchy. Brake balance is sketchy. Again, issues with the body, crappy Bondo work. Issues with the frame if it's a body on frame car. Issues with suspension mounting brackets. All of these things come into play. And look, let me tell you something. If you crawl up underneath an old car and it is covered in black paint, run. Don't walk away from that car. They are hiding all kinds of sins underneath that thing. It's better to run away from that thing than to be hauled away from it if that thing fails on you when you're out trying to have a good time with it. Paul is saying, I think the Hellcat is such a better car. The Roadrunner was fun when I was 20. Now I'm 60 and the Hellcat is so much nicer. Well, true. And to that point, it's really difficult. You can't be nostalgic about the present. That's the problem. And, when you're looking at the Roadrunner, there was just so much cool going on back then that a lot of that cool is lost in technology nowadays. And don't get me wrong, by every conceivable metric, the modern car, the Hellcat in this case, topic of discussion here, is going to be a better car. But that being said, it's not, it'll be a while before it can cross the threshold of just cool, because it will never, ever have that everyman accessibility that the Roadrunner had. It just won't. It can't. I mean, these things were ridiculously expensive when they were new. So yeah, it'll never have that level of cool, but it'll certainly have it'll hold some very cool real estate in history with everything that this car has been able to do up to this point. So let's see. The boy's saying, now when I get my Chevelle, I'm going to completely get that thing and rebuild it from the ground up. I'll probably in my 40s or 50s before I get one, though. Hey, ain't nothing wrong with saving up. And listen, if it takes you that long to be able to pick one up, you might need to be saving for that long for that build. But I'll tell you this, it'll be worth it, especially when you get the right one. Don't settle when it comes to cars like that. Please, if it takes you saving up for an extra 5 years to buy the right one, do that and have 2 or 3 people eyeball it. Don't let your eyes be the one that, or don't let your eyes be the ones that that can make us an informed decision for you, because they're going to be clouded with emotion. Get some objective folks over there to look at it, pick it apart. If it passes their test, you'll be in good shape at that point. Let's see. Hayden saying, I was referring to the last generation as in 08 to 14 Challengers, for example, or 11 to 14 GTs. Sorry for the confusion. Oh, it's all good. Let's see. 11 to 14 GTs are fun. CJ is saying there's also a YouTube channel called Cranky V, and he has an old 66 F100 with a 390 FE that has been rebuilt and has a huge cam in it. Man, that thing sounds nasty at full throttle. 390 is actually a pretty cool engine. A lot of people don't know that that is the engine that Carroll Shelby wanted to run in the Cobras. It was an all aluminum version of that car, and it got scrapped for the 289 and the 427 sidewire. Bit of history. Shawnee's saying, thoughts on the show Graveyard Cars? I don't really have any thoughts on that show. I think it's a neat show. I think it's a neat concept. But the problem with that show is you're not hearing what it costs to turn one of those cars. And it's no small amount. Very few of those cars are going to roll out for less than, I'm sure, $70,000, $80,000 worth of work getting done to them, if they've done any real amount of work to them at all. And that's tough to hear. But it takes the everyman out of the show once you start talking about money. Money is not only one of the worst things you can talk about just in general, but when you start to tie it with cars like that, on one hand, you don't want to do it because you're selling the fantasy, right? You're selling the fantasy of owning that CUDA. You're selling the fantasy of owning that Roadrunner or Super B or whatever, GTX, whatever it's going to be. The last thing you want to do is cloud up fantasy with dollar bills. So I kind of get that, just from a production standpoint, but it would be interesting to hear what it costs to resurrect one of those cars. I don't want to hear about one that looks like it was thrown into a meat grinder and wadded up. That's just some stupid shit. I mean, dude, let it go, man. But there are some of the builds that I would be interested in, only to get a better understanding of the value of that vehicle once it leaves. Give you a perfect example of why. There's, I've got a thing for old DeSotos, 57, 58 DeSotos. If I were to get my hands on one, I was actually working on this a little bit, but if I were to be able to get my hands on one, the cost, and it's a decent example, but the cost to bring that car up to a modern standard of performance and safety and everything else that I would feel good about driving, because shit, who knows what's going to happen, right? But realistically, a modern level of performance and everything else, you're still talking about a $40,000-ish build, and that's assuming the car is in really good shape, maybe even more. Modern Hemi swap, 392 swap, the whole bit. Now, here's the trick, though. What's the car worth when you're done? And again, I hate to throw around that, I don't want to cloud the fantasy with real dollars, but this is the truth. Whatever money I put into that DeSoto, for example, I wouldn't ever be able to get that money back out of the car. I mean, it would be a passion project. Now, granted, I get something out of it, but not a lot. And certainly not, it wouldn't be an investment. Again, it'd be just building it, driving it. If I ever got rid of it, selling it, that's your passion money, right? If you never sell it, you're still out the 60 grand plus whatever it costs you to build the car. They've never really done that, at least in my experience. I mean, I don't watch the show on a super regular basis. I like it. I like what they do. But I can't really dive into it like Cannonball style. But at any rate, I would like for them to be a little bit more transparent with what some of these things cost. But I know that would ruin the show. So What do you say? I don't know. Kind of hard to say. Du Bois saying, also quick question. I plan on going with a manual transmission. I was thinking on going with a 6-speed or a 7-speed. Which of the two do you recommend? The 6-speed, hands down. Yeah, TR6060 is going to be easier to work with. More people have done swaps with those Tremix than any other transmission. So it's going to be easier. They're slick shifting. They're very robust. That's what I would go with. Let it ride. CJ Colvin saying, I drove my dad's 2019 Charger Scat Pack, and man, it's peppy. Even with the tap on the throttle, it really moves. Yeah, they do. 392s are extremely peppy engines. Destroyer 1320 saying, even to be hope you and your fam are safe. Right back at you, my friend. And yeah, so far so good. You know, we got plenty of toilet paper, and HEB's our friend. But yeah, no, everything's fine. The work from home thing is kind of weird. I mean, I do office out of the house quite a bit though, so it's not that far removed from what I typically do. But when you don't have that face-to-face interaction, that's the thing that throws me off. I'm very much an in-person type of a person. Being on the phone is kind of weird for me. I despise text messaging. I mean, I get the value of it, but I'm just not a text guy. I'm like, you need to communicate with me, just call me. Text is like for just things like whatever. But anyway, I think I'm starting to getting separation anxiety. You know, myself, my clients. It's weird not having that one-on-one interaction. But so far, so good. Smoking at 5 saying, I view performance like a pyramid. The faster it is, the closer to the top and more narrow the area, you can actually use the power and enjoy it. Very good way to look at it. You know, it's funny. The where I am with it is there's a breakover point. There's a breakover point for me where the car just is no longer fun anymore. And I have gone to that point and way past it. Okay. And I understand it completely. I get that most guys aren't going to modify their cars to the point that I have modified cars or some of you guys have modified cars because they're just not that into it. They don't want to get grubby. They don't want to get their hands dirty, what have you. Okay, fine. Leave it stock. But for those of us that just have to have that grease on our hands, the problem is that these cars respond very well to those mods. And it's not like you're picking up a small amount of power or you're starting out with a small amount of power. These cars are starting out with big power and then they pick up huge power when you modify them. So they go from fast to just scary, you know, and for the uninitiated, you don't want to have them riding along if you're going to do a 60 to 150 run with them. I mean, you'll be cleaning feces out of your passenger seat. That's never a good look. So yeah, I get it there, but that breakover point is real, man. It is very real. Let's see. Sean saying, what would be a target horsepower for your wife's Camaro to get it into the fun zone? 300 at the wheels would be pretty good for a 3,400 pound car. Yeah, so, for right now, you're just going to let the 305 live. The engine just keeps firing up and running, so it's kind of hard to justify diving too deep into it. Not to mention it's a 305. Kind of hard to really do anything with a 305. I know there's people that have gone fast with 305. Not that fast, bro. Trust me. So the fun thing about the car right now, though, is that it is so torquey. The tip-in throttle response on these old TBI 305s is hysterical. And to be honest, in fact, I took it out the other day. I've got to put tires on the back of it now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, I took it out the other day just to drive the thing. And the funny thing about that car is that it will cruise at whatever mile an hour you want it to cruise at. And the funny thing is, though, the throttle pedal itself, let's say if this is your throttle pedal travel, from here to here, right? So this is your throttle pedal travel, and the difference between here and here, okay, just that boop, like that, like that and this is irrelevant. You could put a piece of wood behind it down here, it wouldn't make a difference. Everything happens in that small tip-in area, which for me, is a riot because it's just such a fun, different driving experience. It doesn't have to be fat. That's one other thing I want to, good point, by the way, Sean. Look, guys, it doesn't have to be fast to be fun. In fact, the old adage is incredibly real and true. It is a lot more fun to drive a slow car fast or ride a slow motorcycle fast than it is to drive a fast car fast or a fast motorcycle fast. There is nothing that'll put a stupid, big, dumb grin on your face like taking an old Ninja 250 on a set of 5-year-old tires out on a closed circuit like T Hill is the first one that comes to mind. That type of shit is hysterical because you're wide open the entire time. Only thing you're using the brakes to do is to load up the chassis to drop that thing into a corner. I'm telling you, it is a riot when you start getting into that type of stuff. And the same applies with this Camaro. It is not fast. About the most I would ever do with this car is a 383. That would be, 383 AFR 210 heads, one of my cams, RPM, the intake, and that's it. Set of long tubes, boom, combination's done. And that would be a really fun project. But again, it's just the money, and I don't know if there's enough entertainment dollars left at that point. So right now, it's fun, and it'll still do a burnout, guys. Look, 305 will still light the tires up. So I don't know. Things are a shitload of fun, and I have more fun with it because it's just I don't know. To me, it's just a laugh, and they handle well too. Christian saying, when do you think we can expect new rumors and leaks from Mopar? Great question. As awesome as the Hellcat twins are, the current generation is getting a bit long in the tooth. Bro, I will agree with that. Listen, man, the last group of rumors that I heard, I immediately forgot about. The reason why is because the rumors have been so freaking varied coming into this that it's hard really to get a gauge on what's real. So I would like to think that sometime by the end of this year, we're going to start getting some kind of a leak, but I don't know. It's just kind of hard to say. And you got to remember that they've just now recently released the Red Eye. I mean, the Red Eye is still fairly new to the market, only a couple of years really into the mix, really about a year and a half. So there's that to consider. But I wouldn't really get too I wouldn't get too antsy just yet. I would just kind of let things ride for another year, basically, before we start getting any solid leaks coming out. We might hear something by the end of this year, but it's going to take a little bit before we start to see anything substantial, I believe. Kevin Collins saying Boss 302 is a hell of a budget. Very true. I haven't seen a lot of those come up for sale, though, lately. A buddy of mine that had one. That was a nice car. I really liked it. Definitely a sweet ride. Derek is saying, is a 600 wheel horsepower 392 attainable without forced induction and reliable? Nope and nope. Without losing that bottom end, I would love to run with the Hellcats. Probably not ever going to happen. Here's the thing. Here's what you can do, though. You can have something that will put down a reliable 500 horsepower to the rear wheels if you're on a pretty, let's just say, a kind dynojet rear wheel dynamometer. No, you can get around 500 or so in real terms, okay? And to be honest with you, there's not a major difference between 500 horse and 600 horse once you start reeling in some of these bigger numbers. But the problem is the intake manifold. You're going to start to run into problems with the ability to feed that thing. Aftermarket just really doesn't have anything to offer. Strokers can help. You go with an Edelbrock intake. I've seen as much as 540 horsepower. That was out of a 426 through a NAG 1 Edelbrock intake, one of my camshafts. 1 7/8 inch long tubes, no cats, basic garden variety hot rod 426. But that intake manifold retains a ton of heat. So, if you're taking to the drag strip, make sure your ice budget is legit. Haven't messed with the Holley intake, so I can't really say too much on that, aside from the fact that it is going to want to make power significantly higher than either the stock or the Victor, which is the Edelbrock, will want to make. So keep that in the back of your mind when you start to contemplate a build. There's a 440 option that's available, but again, you're starting to really get into the territory of stepping over dollars to collect dimes. I'm sorry to tell you this, but the amount of money that you're going to spend to throw that stroker into that car is going to encroach upon Hellcat money. And the Hellcat comes with a better transmission. It's going to walk all over anybody's in a combination. And it's going to do so all while still being a Hellcat. So if you get bored with it, you want to sell it, it's going to retain its value a lot better than an engine build on a car that is going to require a very specialized buyer. Hellcats are easy to sell. So keep that in the back of your mind too when you're contemplating on going through one of those builds. Unless you are absolutely sure you're going to keep that thing for the rest of your life, you've got to take those things into consideration. And because of that, that's why you don't see too many stroker 392 builds that are out there. They just, for the amount of money you're going to spend, they don't pick up a ton of power. They're not that far removed from the 392 in terms of the power that they will make, but they will make you very far removed from a lot of dollar bills that you ain't ever going to see again, whereas you will with a Hellcat. So from a value proposition, Hellcat is where it's at. Big Daddy Hog Nuts, I like that one too, saying, how does sport mode button in my RT affect the performance of my engine and training tune? It will extend your transmission tunes. It will make them a little bit more firm. On the engine side, not quite so much. You'll notice that the throttle settings may be a little bit more aggressive, but it's primarily with the transmission in that car. And I would say that for the most part, with a tune, you can get some gains out of that. We're talking about, what does that button do? When you're looking at tuning, especially in the transmission, we tune on both sides of that. Tune the street, tune the sport side. When you look at the timing values, all the timing values are set at the same. All the command air fuel ratios are the same. Unless you start getting into valet mode or like 500 horse mode, things like that with the Hellcats or with the SRT cars. But for the most part, really not a big difference in the actual engine tune itself. So in other words, none of your spark modifiers are changed. None of your base timing is changed. Watt timing is watt timing and partial timing is partial timing. So hopefully that answers the question. Rick Rossi is saying, I love the older vintage muscle cars that I had built and raced, but I would never go back. These new SRT Chargers and all SRTs are so much faster, dependable, comfortable, and more reliable. That's true. And, the other side of it is that, for a lot of guys, they see the pictures, they see the style. If you see the old advertisements, you'll see a lot of things going on with those cars that is just quintessentially cool. And you just don't get that same cool with these modern cars. But what it may lack in that, raw cool factor, they more than make up for in performance, reliability, economy, and, just the list goes on and on. Safety being another big part of that. So, we don't really have the cool that we used to have, but the trade-off is stuff that keeps you alive when, all that cool gets you in a ditch. Let's see, Smoking at 5 saying, yeah, I've heard graveyard cars say it's 60 to 100 grand for a build. Yeah, it just makes it tough, man. Ghost 74 saying it's fun building an old vehicle. You respect it more and you can build it how you want. That's true. And another part of that, by the way, got a lot of scars on my hands from this, but there's a massive difference with how you will feel about the car and the things that you will kind of let slide when you've built it yourself or you and your buddies have built something in the garage. it's those idiosyncrasies, the imperfections that make that vehicle just so perfect that you also don't get with modern cars and these ultra, super expensive restorations and things like that. One of the things that you miss out on when it's too perfect is the ability to just take the thing out and act like a fool driving the thing around. But yeah, there's a lot about the hobby that if you've never built one of these cars, or if you've never built anything, then, or been a part of a build, then you lose. There's a certain appreciation for the modern cars that you will never have until you shed blood all over whatever car you and your buddies are working on. It could be your car, buddy's car, what have you. In fact, I put a picture on Instagram. It's been a while back. It's the picture that got the most likes on Instagram is a picture of me bleeding all over my wife's Camaro. I said, well, I guess it's ours now. So, anyway, and the Jeep too. I think bled all over that. Now that you mention it, there isn't anything in the fleet that I haven't bled all over. So yeah, rite of passage, I guess. Go 74 is saying, man, get Haynes manual and you can build a vehicle yourself. It takes time that you can save money and you'll enjoy it. Absolutely you can. As a matter of fact, it's funny you mentioned that. The day after we picked up my wife's Camaro, I bought a Haynes manual for it. A vintage Haynes manual, by the way. Paul Christoph saying, I've been to Springfield, Oregon graveyard car many times. It's 80 plus grand. And the worst thing is it's 2 to 3 years. I would imagine that it would be. To do it right, I can see it taking that long and costing that much. Easy Rider. I would much rather drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow. Absolutely. I would rather drive anything fast. See, Paul is saying, I would like to do some work on that cat. I have the Demon Springs and the 309s also, ATI 10% lower. What order would you do things? Always, always, always build the car from the back to the front and from the ground up. So in this case, you've got the Demon Springs and the 309 gear. So I would go 309 gear first, Demon Springs second, then put the ATI in, but you're going to need to get a tune to go with that ATI. So just know that you're at some point probably going to be sending that computer off to get unlocked right around the time you put it on jack stands to start messing with the suspension. Let's see. Paul saying, trying to improve 60 foot at a 154 now, have gone 1042 at 135. That's how I would do it. You'll be into that 1020 range here real quick. Ghost 74 is saying, for my 383 build, should I put a TBI back on it or will a 4-barrel Holly provide more horsepower? Well, 4-barrel Holly is going to give you quite a bit more horsepower. I would forego TBI at that point. That's what I'll do with her car. If it ever gets to that point, I doubt very seriously that I would go back in with a TBI. Now, Holly does have a pretty decent TBI setup, I think. At least they used to. Anyway, it was one of their fuel injection retrofit kits that they used to run. They're fairly decent. It would feed a big block, a fairly mild big block. I don't think it would cover much more than about 500 horsepower. But unless it's a dedicated standalone, I would probably not try to see if I could get the original stuff to work. I would just go carbureted, call it good, and go from there. So that's what I would do if it were mine. Then boys running saying 6L90 versus 8L90. Which do you think is better? I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with those transmissions. I would probably say 6L90 only because I believe, if memory serves me correctly, the case is the same size and the drums are more robust than the 6L90, but I could be wrong. The rating on the transmission is the same. So they both have the 900 Newton meter carrying capacity, but I think the 6L90 can do it a little bit better. But I don't know enough about that one. So that is something that I would have to do some research. Now, if we're talking about the HP70 versus the HP90, I can tell you all you need to know about how important it is to get a conversion to an HP90. But between those two, I tell you what, let's just put it to you like this. If they're both 900 Newton meter rated transmissions, either one of them is going to be just fine. It just depends on what you're going to be running them with or running them in. These modern transmissions are pretty amazing for what they'll carry. And then boys running saying, see, that's what I was talking about last video and in this one, is that by building your own car, you get a sense of accomplishment. Absolutely you do. Then boys, what year's my wife's Camaro? It is a 92 TBI 305 700 R4 Rally Sport. Paul is saying, thanks, B. I do have an OST dyno too now. Very nice. Grabby Gear is saying, I had many 63 to 71 muscle cars, and honestly, the Scat Pack Shaker Challenger has given me the best modern day muscle car experience. Just my opinion. A lot of folks share that same opinion with you, my friend. So, yeah, in terms of just muscle car feel, presence, what you get out of it, the driving experience, it's really difficult to beat the Challengers or the Mopars in that respect. And you know, for what it's worth, you know, there's a lot of folks that'll sit around and talk about how, you know, the Challenger is heavy, it does this, it does that. The problem is the Challenger keeps doing really well in sales. And the big reason why it does so well in sales, number one is styling. And number two is that it is the only car out of any of the other cars that are offered that will give you a true sense of a muscle car experience. So that can't be overlooked for sure. Oh, Ghost 74 is saying also, you don't even realize you're bleeding until you're done. What's funny is that you never do know you're cut. You're exactly right. And so in the case of that picture that I took from my wife's car, I didn't even know that I was bleeding until I looked down. And I was going, what the hell is leaking on this car? Like what, like did I cut something? I thought that I don't know what I thought. I was going, what the shit? And I looked down and it's like, I look like I just stuck my hand in an alligator's mouth. I mean, I basically, you know, those little bitty micro cuts that you get that like if you're shaving and you cut yourself and it just doesn't ever want to stop bleeding. It was kind of like that on my hand. I had, on the back part of I think it was this knuckle or this knuckle? It was one of these anyway. It was two small gashes that just popped the skin open. And it was kind of deep, but not super deep. And it was really sharp. So I didn't even feel it. And yeah, so I'm bleeding all over the thing going, what the hell? What's this? And I'm going, oh, bummer. So I was like, haha, I guess it's ours. And it was just kind of a bit of a joke. It was fun. But, let's see. 76 Aspen checking in. What's up, man? Saying hi, B. What's up, man? Rick is saying, I cherish the old days and the fast cars that I built. Climbed that Mopar mountain. It had an all-steel small tire 383 4-speed. 3 mufflers, 1130, 1140s. That is awesome. 69 Super B. That's the fun stuff, man. Those are the funner, or the cars that would have been fun. And the problem is we don't really have that nowadays. At least not anywhere near the way that they had them then, or you guys had them then, I should say. I can't really sit around and say that, you know, I am nostalgic for those times. I mean, I wasn't even alive during that, but I grew up around a lot of people that were, and I got to see these cars in real life. And it's funny because when you're around them as a kid, it's different than when you see them for the first time as an adult because they're so rare now. To give you an example, you know, we have these Lone Star Mopar Fest, but it's all third gen stuff. And it's a real shame because you never get a chance to see the history of what this third gen stuff came from. You don't get a chance to see obviously no AMCs, not even any Mopars. There's no darts. There's no B-bodies. There's no E-bodies anywhere to be seen. And so you lose kind of that sense of community when it's just all the same thing. And back then, see, the cool thing is you had different variants of all these different cars where, and I don't mean just like different challengers, like we have the Dynamic and the TA and the this and that. Not that. We're talking the CUDA, the Challenger, the GTX, the Super B, the Belvederes, the Sport Furies, and all the really cool cars. And they were all different looking, and you could tell them apart, and they all made sense. That to me was a lot more cool than kind of what we see nowadays. So it's a bummer that you don't get a chance to see that. But even still, I should say, when you do, you've got to know how much money is tied up in that old iron. I mean, yeah, to some, it might just be an old car, but when I look at that, I'm looking at it from a completely different standpoint. I know the work that's gone into that thing to keep it looking the way that it is, or then the restoration that it's taken to get it to that point now. That is a massive undertaking. And, that is something that eats up a lot of somebody's life. So you're not just looking at a car. You're looking at all the work that it took to get it to that point, the amount of time out of this person's life or their family's lives to get it to that point. I mean, this is something they have wrapped their entire lives around to get looking right. And unfortunately, a lot of folks just don't see it that way. They just see it as another car. So I don't know. Kind of a bummer. Let's see. Cleaver Enterprise is saying, finally put my true CAI thermostat and tune on the Hemi Favor on the 392 Charger. It is a must to get a new throttle body. Yep. I'm telling you guys, get an 84 millimeter true through bore throttle body at least for that thing. New Boys Run saying, cool, 92 Camaro, nice pickup. My next car is going to be an F body. I'm going for the Camaro's Evil Twin. I like it. No, I love Camaros. I love all this stuff. That's the thing. And it's funny too, because, I am a big fan of all of them. I love Chevrolet, Ford, Mopars, you name it. What's interesting though is nowadays just how polarized folks can get. And, but yeah, I'm right there with you. Love the F body stuff, man. It's a riot for me. Gravity Gear is asking, in your opinion, what direction do you think Dodge will take in the next 5 years for performance cars? Well, what we do know is that the LX, or technically the LA platform, has been the agreement between FCA and Mercedes-Benz was extended through 2023. So the way that the car sits now is more or less the way that you're going to see it through 2023. At that point, there has been talk that there were going to be some changes, namely in efforts to lighten the car up, potentially a little bit smaller version, but it's basically a tweaked version of the LX/LA platform. But that is about the most that you can expect. Now, in terms of engines, no talk has been carried through about a change in engines. In fact, one of the big kickers for not using the Ghibli platform or the Giulia platform, or whatever platform they use, but basically the platform that the Ghibli is built on or the platform that the Giulia is built on, is because the V8s wouldn't really fit properly in those cars. So in other words, they're moving forward V8s of blaring. So there's that. But the reality is that we're not hearing too much because there's really not much for them to talk about just yet. I think it's a little bit early. Now, all that being said, who knows? FCA has thrown us curveballs in the past, could just as easily throw one in the future. But the way that I'm looking at it, it's starting to seem like they're going to throw us basically a lighter weight version of what we already have. Now, don't take that too far. When I say lighter weight, I'm talking it might be a couple of 100 pounds lighter. I don't think that we're going to see anything in like that 400-pound lighter range. I just don't think that's really a thing that's going to be possible. But if we can get something that makes the car a little bit more competitive, that does not remove that big car feel that the car has now, which is why so many people buy the Mopars, I think that that'll be a winner. I just hope that they don't overshoot their target and put the car more in I guess you could say, a direct line of sight competition with the Mustang or the Camaro, if it's even out anymore at that point, because that's the one thing that Mopar has. It is the big car. It's the big, brawny American car that a lot of people are spending money on. And if they move away from that recipe, then it's just going to be an also ran that doesn't have the backing of the aftermarket. It doesn't have the backing from the manufacturer to begin with in terms of performance. So you're going to be kind of, it's going to get out of its lane. And right now, Mopar owns a lane, and it needs to stay in that lane to be successful, in my opinion. Let's see, Rick saying, I was very fortunate to live it back then and again now. Very cool. Blessed. I agree, brother. Awesome. I love it. Mr. 76 Aspen. I love my 76 Aspen. 5-speed with a 318 Diplomat cop car motor. And it, I love it. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, man. I like those cars. Cleaver's checking in saying, I lived next to a guy that had a 70 Roadrunner. Made me want a Hemi every Sunday morning. I agree, for sure. Dim Boys Running saying, see what I mean? Back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we had way more variety. The Grand Nationals, Aero Coupe, Cudas, Roadrunners, Torinos, AMXs, and much more. Only 4 culprits now, Mustangs and Camaros. Yeah, we don't have what we had back then. And unfortunately, they say it was always better back then. Well, I don't know if it was better, but they had a lot more variety and a lot more entertaining matchups. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, styles make fights, matchups make great races. And in this case, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, you're just going to keep seeing the same matches over and over and over again. Whereas back then, man, you had AMC scramblers going up against Trans Ams. You had, some B-body Mopar going up against a Nova. You had, a Vet that was tangling with a supercharged Avanti. I mean, you had so many cool different areas and nooks and crannies that you could find yourself in. It may not have been a better time, but it was certainly a much more rich time in history. So, for that, there's definitely something to be said for. Let's see. Sherrod is checking in and saying, I'm still trying to get more from my 2018 392 with a forged motor and Magnuson TVS 2300. That'd be a fun combination. Don't try to get greedy, but it would be a fun car to run around with. He's saying, I have a 6% lower and want the 260 upper for it, trying to get the more boost. What do you think? 13 to 15 pounds of boost. I have a 3.0 upper and getting 8 pounds. Well, here's the thing. Let's see. Let's see. Are you running? Let me ask you this. Is that a manual car? I want to say it's a manual car. Didn't you say it was a manual car before? I can't remember. Anyway, you can probably get by. Yeah, if you're going to spool the thing up, here's one thing I'll recommend for you. Spool the thing up. If you got the bottom end to take it, you can do whatever you want with it. It's basically the same as having a Hellcat, more or less. So you can kind of get away with a little bit more with that car than I think you're already up to. I would be a little bit cognizant of fuel quality at that point. But if you've already got the money in the lower end and you're confident with your tuner being able to manage that tune on 93 octane, I would say that you're probably in pretty decent shape. Without knowing what cam you're running, fuel you're running, and things like that, it's a little difficult for me to give straight advice. But just walking around numbers, typically you'll be safe around 10 pounds of boost if you're hovering around a 9.5 to 1 compression ratio, and all things being equal on pump gas. If you've elected to stay higher compression and you're planning on running E85, then I would say somewhere around 13 pounds of boost would be a good place to kind of stop, just in terms of, well, I don't know what kind of injectors you've got, what kind of fuel system, et cetera, but you're going to start to run into limitations of fuel systems pretty quickly. And because you've got a 392, it means you're going to have to run probably a triple hat 4 setup, dedicated fuel system, because your stock lines just will not flow enough. So without knowing all the details, can't really give all the advice I'd like to give, but it sounds like you're off to a good start, and that 10 pound area is going to help you kind of set the stage, so to speak. Go74 saying, to us car guys, this is not just a hobby, it's our life. It's exciting what you can do to a vehicle. No, I agree with you 100%. It's what we do. This is who we are. This is, it's interesting because I lived in Northern California for a good chunk of time. It's talking about, the lifestyle, the car lifestyle, the motorsports lifestyle, the motorcycle lifestyle. And I was a part of that. And it's funny because up there, you never ask what anybody does for a living. It's actually a little bit offensive. If you're in a social setting, you don't say, hey, what do you do? Okay, well, if somebody asks me what I do, I say, man, I love working on cars, love talking about cars. I'm basically just kind of a car nut. That's my gas. I love Mopars primarily, but I've been in this lifestyle for a long time. So for me, motorsports, man. What about you? What do you like to do? It's about what do you like to do. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. It's what you do for a living how does that enrich your life? A little bit different way of looking at things. So anyway, I get that. For me, it's I never ask anybody what do they do. I like to know what they're passionate about, because you find somebody that just does what they love. Super rare to find. Even people that go into business with something that they love, it turns into a job, which means it's kind of a job at that point. But when you start talking about their loves or interests and things like that, it's fun to watch folks light up and chat about that. Nobody likes talking about their job. And that's how folks in the car hobby are. It's really a lifestyle. You're very right about that. Ghost saying no, gas engines will not die for a while. Absolutely correct about that. Then boys saying, what do you think Dodge is going all electric like Ford has done and GM is trying to do? Oh, and now I see why Ghost said that. Man, I got to tell you something. I don't really have a problem with an all electric muscle car. I don't have a problem with an all electric anything, provided that it's fast. It'll light the tires up and it does cool stuff. Where I just don't really see that being in fact, there's folks that have been trying to hot rod and make their own electric hot rods for a long time. It's just battery technology hasn't really been there. So now that it is, you're able to take advantage of a new type of powertrain. To me, electric is no different than if you were to say that there's this new engine that they came out with that's kind of quiet and it runs on electron juice. Different kind of fuel. You can find it in wall sockets in your house. Okay, cool. What makes it better? Well, it's instant torque and efficiency ratios are orders of magnitude of 3 to 4 times more efficient than a gasoline engine. Okay, sounds great. So this thing that's going to run on pixie dust that I can get from a wall socket in my house that'll light the tires up pretty much at will, that's kind of a cool thing. So if they can ever perfect the battery technology to give us the range that makes sense and have an infrastructure for recharging that would make it more convenient, then that would be super sweet. So, but all that being said, the problem with the electric motor, at least in my head, is it's not a living, breathing thing like a gasoline or a diesel engine, something that sucks in air, creates a big bang, and then has to let out, the CO2 and all the fun, noxious gases that our engines make. It's kind of like a living, breathing thing. And so I don't know, it's a little bit less inanimate than an electric motor. So maybe that connection would maybe be lost. I don't know. It's tough to say that because electricity has its own, those motors are going to have their own endearing qualities, but I don't know. It's just going to be a little bit weird not changing oil in something. I don't know. Best place to buy a 370 diff for a 2018 Charger. Well, get in good with your guys at the dealership because that's pretty much where it's going to start. Get online and see if anybody is getting rid of one in any of the forums as well. Take a look at that. In a lot of cases, forums, if you're a member of a forum, you can get some discounts through some online dealership part sales. So check that out. But if you're looking at a 370, man, get ready to shell out some shekels, bro, because they are pricey. Rick saying, yeah, I agree with Dodge OS Loyal is something big, like you and I would like to see an aluminum 392 bomb-proof short block. That reliability can be sprayed or boosted. You know, the pistons are going to be the questionable part of that if it's a 392. And keep in mind that sticking pistons high, or sticking the compression ring high and keeping the ring gap tight is good for efficiency. So I wouldn't necessarily look to see any wide ring gaps low on a piston, but well, I mean, you can always pull them apart and give them ring gaps. So there's that, but yeah, something a little bit lighter weight for sure wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. And, something makes a little bit more power wouldn't hurt. I just don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know what the issue is with that either. It can't be a costing thing, is it? I mean, is aluminum that much more expensive? I mean, they just don't have anywhere to keep it. I don't know. It's just everybody else has got an aluminum block. Why do these not have an aluminum block? Now, look, I get it for the Hellcat. More dimensionally stable, stronger, more robust, high nickel block. Yeah, okay. Hold all the power you could ever want to run through it. Awesome. So why do you need iron for an NA car? It just seems to me like it's a waste of an opportunity to have an iron block in that thing. I mean, horsepower to weight ratio is fine if you're comparing it to an LS3, but we're kind of past that now. So anyway, Rick's saying, yeah, you're right. Back then it was run what you brung racing, and it was a lot of fun because there's a lot of parity in those cars. Like I was talking about, an SC Rambler versus a Dart with a small block. It was going to be a really close race. It made for a lot of fun racing too. Sherrod saying, auto car, saying, okay, thanks. Gotcha, brother. Mr. 76, Aspen saying, my job is working on cars. My passion is a mad scientist working on cars. I like it. Cleaver saying, hybrid Hemi, yay or nay? Look, they're already complicated and heavy enough as it sits. I don't know that it's going to do a whole lot of good to try to figure out how to package enough of a battery and an electric motor into one of these things to make it viable. Now, that being said, if there was any way to actually make the thing, I would want to see him do a hybrid, just not in this car. I'm cool with hybrids. Yay, hybrid, but I just don't want to see it done in this particular car. I would rather see it done in its own standalone configuration, I guess you could say. And a lot of the reason why I'm saying that is that I don't know where you would put the stuff for one of these cars. In the trunk? I mean, maybe. Maybe if you had the V6, or if you had like an e-torque setup on a V6, that would be kind of cool. That's kind of a hybrid. Something along those lines I could really get behind, and it would be pretty much a ride, especially if it's in the all-wheel drive GT. Think about that, an extra 100 foot-pounds of torque like that right off the line. That'd be a lot of fun. Crazy SRT8 saying, I agree with you on the old school Mopars and don't see enough of them at the track. Have you ever noticed how not too many people want the Plymouth Scamp, and the Dart is the one everybody goes for? I do, and I don't know why. I think people just forget about the Scamps, but the Scamps are out there. There was actually funny. There was a guy that had a silver one here in Baytown. This is when I was a kid. That was a pretty rowdy little car too. Big Daddy saying, we just discovered you a few weeks since then. I've watched all your videos. This is my first time catching a live show. Really appreciate all the knowledge you're passing on, brother. Thank you very much, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. 76 Aspen saying, my issue with electric muscle cars is it knocks a lot of people out of the muscle game because of the theaters that are necessary. Let me make sure I'm reading that right. Well, yeah, it might knock some people out, but it could bring some folks in too. You got to remember, internal combustion is a pretty intimidating thing. I mean, we're not used to camshafts, camshaft timing, carburation, fuel delivery, things like that. It can be tough, but everybody's familiar with an electric motor. Everybody uses them every single day, whether you know it or not. So, yeah, they're much more familiar, and I honestly think that it will bring more folks into the lifestyle and the hobby and everything. My only thoughts on that, the only downside really is, again, range, and I mean, because performance isn't the problem. It's easy to make an electric car extremely fast, but performance and durability are going to be the things, and range are going to be the things that you're going to have to worry about first. Rick's saying that he's saying, I know that electric cars are fast, but damn, you lose all the sound and feel of a fast car. That would be very strange to convert over to. I get it. I understand that completely. Paul's checking in and saying, I built a 65, let's see, Bell 1 Hemi replica, went with 3,250 pounds with a 512. Let's see, no, never turned it over 6,200 and went 10/8 at 124. It's a lot of work, but had a great time building it. Even did the body and paint. Man, that sounds like a lot of fun. The next actual project that I do, I'll be doing paint, body, and everything else on that here in the garage. Should be a riot. And we'll see once we get past all this COVID BS. Once we get through this, that's when I'll start to take a look at things and see what I need to do about possibly getting that next project in here. But before I can play with that, I've got to get my wife's Camaro up and running a little bit better than what it is now. So we're going to be doing all the steering components need to be replaced. I'll be doing potentially, let's see, after that, what are we going to be doing to that car? Oh, dashboard. Almost, yeah, I got to do all the dash stuff. It's doing what third gen F bodies do best, which is not work their dashboards. Anyway, a bunch of fun little projects to do, but that car is a lot of fun, and it deserves it. It's a fun little car. Mr. 76 asked me, saying electric cars are just too surgically sterile. I agree with that 100%. Go 74 saying, I don't know about the new C8. It seems to try and mimic the European sports cars too much. Yeah, that's part of what I was talking about at one point with a buddy of mine. Is I get that this is Duntop's dream coming true. I understand that. I really, really do. But guys, I got to tell you something. It doesn't do me a whole lot of good to live out his dream. I mean, we've been dealing with front engine, rear drive Corvettes now this entire time, and it's tough when you move away from that, and the only thing that you have to compare it to are the Lambos and the R8s and things like that. So for me, yeah, I'm kind of cool with it. But if this is going to be the new norm and the dollar bills are going to be the new norm, you got to count me out. I mean, I'm out of the running now. Sorry, it's just the way it is. Simple economics. Rick saying we're going to have to crush and recycle a lot more pop cans to get that engine. True enough, man. Maybe if we start working together, we can get them to build it. Kevin saying, hey, Mason, do you think the Boss 302 is the best value when it comes to Mustangs and would prefer it over the 2015 Plus cars? No, I'd go 2015 over the Boss every single day. The 2015 Plus cars have got everything that the Boss cars have and then some, especially when you start looking at transmission choices. So I would probably stick with those. And I mean, if you can find a Boss for super cheap, obviously it might be a way to go. But the 15 and up cars are just, God, they're so good, and the ergonomics and the interiors are just so much nicer. That's the reason why I would go with that one. Let's see. Oh, Paul's saying, hey, just let you know, Nick at Archangel should have the new batteries out soon. Yeah, I haven't heard back from him in a while. Hopefully he's gotten past all the issues that he had. And I mean, I'm loving mine. So yeah, y'all keep hammering, man. Let's get y'all some Archangel batteries in those cars. Grab a Gear is saying, old versus new is so fun to compare. Closest races my brother and I have had is 2005 Viper truck versus 70 Challenger 440 6-pack 4-speed with 355 gears in my 2016 Scat Pack versus a 63 Belvedere Cross Ram Roll Race. That'd be a fun car. That'd be a very fun car. Those cross rams are cool. The intake manifolds, they had two different cross rams. You had one that the cross ram, they're kind of offset. It's about this far apart. And then on the older 413s, they were about this far apart. It was ridiculous. They had like 23-inch runners or something like that. Kind of a bit of trivia-ish. Anyway, they were tuned, I think, to make peak torque or something about 23 or 2,500 RPM. Basically, it was just like this tip-in monster torque rush that those things would have. Alex is asking, hey, Mason, had any experience with the old Mopar 440s? If so, how do they take to stroker kits? I don't have a lot of personal experience, although I do have some, as a kid growing up, friends of my dad, other folks talking about the big block Mopars. How do they take to strokers? They do just fine. The big problem with the 440, though, is the cylinder head. You're going to have to step up cylinder heads with those cars. The 440, I'll give you an example. The port velocity on a 440 at 4,700 RPM is the same port velocity on a Gen 2 Hemi head at 6,200 RPM. In other words, they run out of airflow really quickly. So you're going to have to run a different set of heads, set of Edelbrock, the biggest heads you can buy for it. That's what you're going to want to go with if you're going to want to try to run anything on that type of architecture. Now, that being said, they will make a boatload of tip-in torque just in terms of driving experience. They've got a ton of tip-in torque, a lot of mid-range power, and it's one of the reasons why they outsold the Hemis the way that they did. I mean, yeah, it cost, but the cost really wasn't the thing. If I were to put you behind the wheel of a 440 versus a Hemi, the driving experience, just the farting around, I mean, you tip into the throttle and you can light the tires up with a 440. Hemi, kind of the same way, but you just had to leg the thing out, and it just weren't as eager. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Long and short, you're going to need a set of cylinder heads badly for that thing if you're going to want to go stroker. So, word to the wise on that. Yeah, because the heads just don't flow that great. Smoking at 5 saying, great. 7.8 quake off Russia, tsunami alert for West Coast. 2020 is pissed. Holy God, man, are you kidding me? Paul Christoph saying, Alex, it's the only way to go. Let's see. Crazy SRT8 is saying it's all in the name and would have said that, but it wouldn't let me because it limits how many words you can put down. They can literally have the same powertrain as a Dart, but the name sucks. Yeah. Those are fun cars though. Go74 saying they are not making car guy cars anymore. They're making journalist cars now. Yeah. Don't even get me started on the freaking cars for journos. Rick is saying, I'm going to have to say that in the years to come, the Hellcat will hold decent value and go down in muscle car history as a new benchmark standard in this new muscle car area. Mine's staying right here. I'm right there with you, man. I really like mine a lot. And I got to tell you, when it comes to just fun cars overall, being able to enjoy something, this little Hellcat and I have gotten really close. Cleaver's saying, so I don't know if I'm late. I saw a YouTube video of some guys trying out a twin turbo 392 Challenger. They got some good numbers, but they're still trying to break it in. Anything against adding a turbo? Aside from packaging, no. The problem with these cars is that they don't lend themselves very good, or very well, I should say, to a good placement of the turbos. Typically, they wind up right in the bottom, right underneath there. And the problem with that is that they're set low, and I don't know. To me, the way that it's set up, I'm just not a big fan of. And again, it's just the architecture of the platform doesn't really allow it. I've seen some where they've been able to mount them a little bit further up, but I don't know. It just never really looks right. It just looks a little bit out of place. The turbo, though, if I were to build one, would be a great way to go. I mean, turbos are fantastic with their ability to make power. The problem is always packaging. Plus, you got to cool it. It's a nightmare. And really, for most guys on the street just playing around, the E4 supercharger, a Maggie, a Whipple, something like that will get you way more power than you could ever get bored with. So, and we are over 2 hours. I'm going to be checking out, so I'm going to be knocking these out, and we will be good to go. Let's see. Alex is saying, oh, make sure I'm not. Oh, time out. Here we go. Go 74 is saying more air equals more power. Yes, it does. Mr. 70's ass was saying newer cars are too easy to make power. Go to dealership, buy a fast car. The fun was build your car and then learn how to drive it. I say built, not bought. Yeah, you know, for the most part. The thing is that you're always going to be buying something. And the reality is that, you know, they're just not, the newer cars just don't lend themselves to the hobbyists too well either. So, but then again, the average hobbyist doesn't really live a lifestyle. They're just kind of along for the ride, wanting to be a part of it. But, you know, hey, listen, as long as you're paying shops to do the work and they're having fun with their cars, I'm cool with it. Alex Andrews is saying, sounds good. It's my pie in the sky dream to have a 7071 Challenger with an aluminum block 440 stroked out to 500 plus cubes with a 6-pack fuel injection. Now I just need about 100 grand. That'll at least get you started. Grab a gear. Just to mention to Alex, the 63 Belvedere I had was a stroke 440 to 452 with the Edelbrock performance heads. Totally transformed the 440. Absolutely it will. Paul's saying the heads are the biggest thing for the strokers. Also needs a converter for sure. Rear mounted, he's talking about for the turbos. Yeah, kind of. The only problem with rear mount on something like this is that they're a little bit laggy, but it will make plenty of power. You just have to, again, it's whenever you do the rear mount, it's almost the same as when you mount them up front. I like the mounting up front because you get a little bit more immediate turbo response. Mounting in the rear, you can kind of, here's the problem with mounting in the rear. If you're running a front mount intercooler, the exhaust has to go from the front of the car to the back of the car, then back to the front of the car. It's a long trek, and I don't know. You can get a cooler discharge temperature with them though, so at least there's that. But again, they can be a little bit on the laggy side, and they can be a little bit of a pain in the ass to lubricate. I mean, you can engineer anything to work, but it's just the idea that it's more complicated than it really needs to be. I mean, if you're just dying to put turbos on something, yeah, sure. Just make sure that you've got oiling and cooling all figured out way ahead of time. Hopefully the kit manufacturer will have done that for you. Smoking Off 5 saying, thanks for the heads up. You got it. Paul saying, thanks, B. Great chat. Got the arms up. I like it. Thank you, sir. Go 74 saying, awesome chat, B. Good night, bro. Y'all have a great one. Rick saying, see you, brother. Be safe. Be well. All of y'all. Be safe out there. Be well. Take care of yourself. Smoking 05, right back at you, brother. And Cleaver Enterprise saying, I'll try to make the next live chat. Thanks for the advice. My scat is now woke. I like it. Listen, y'all have a great one. Y'all stay healthy out there. It's crazy times we're living in. Be kind. Stay at home. Watch cartoons. Eat cereal. Y'all have a great one. Take care. That's a wrap. Adios.